Hello and welcome to earlymusicsources.com. My name is Elam, and today we look at a beautiful ground by William Byrd. In another score analysis episode, we looked at Zwelling's Mein junges Leben hat ein End, a set of variations for keyboard based on the melody of a song. Another kind of variation genre does not follow a melody, but a bass line. In it, a certain bass or a harmonic sequence is repeated, and variations are improvised or composed upon it. In England, such pieces were called grounds, and were very popular. A particularly beautiful one by William Byrd is called Hugh Ashton's ground. In this episode, we will see how this ground is composed and enjoy its beauty. Let's start. As we said, a ground is a piece which is based on a repeated bass line. In music history, such pieces are sometimes referred to as pieces with a basso ostinato, an insistent or insistently repeating bass. Pieces with repeated basses are rather easy to follow and listen to. And this is probably why so many beloved pieces from music history use such a bass. For example, Monteverdi's famous Lamento della Ninfa is based on a basso ostinato of only 4 descending notes. Such a bass is found in countless other pieces. Another example of a beloved bass, albeit longer, is the Folia, which is also found in countless settings. In England of the 16th and 17th centuries, pieces with repeated basses, called grounds there, were especially beloved. One of the earliest examples is an anonymous ground from around 1520 called My Lady Carries Domp. The repeated bass is very simple, just G, G, D, D. On it, there is a very basic repeating accompaniment that sounds almost modern. And upon this, a melody is added. It is easy to see why this catchy piece has been so well received in modern times, with many recordings arranged for different instruments. From more or less the same period, there is a ground by the composer Hugh Ashton, titled in one source Hugh Ashton's Mask. It has a longer ground bass melody of 16 notes, and apart from the bass, has 3 upper parts. Let's listen a bit and follow the bass. And so on and so on. In a manuscript dedicated to compositions by William Byrd from the end of the century, the famous My Lady Neville's book, we find a piece titled Hugh Ashton's Ground. It appears that William Byrd took the ground of Ashton, divided its rhythm in a steady long-short pattern, and composed a new keyboard piece upon it. This piece is the center of this episode. Before looking into Byrd's piece in more detail, let's see how Thomas Mace describes a ground in the following century, in 1676. The ground is a set number of slow notes, very grave and stately, which, after it is expressed once or twice very plainly, then he that hath good brains and a good hand undertakes to play several divisions upon it, time after time, till he has showed his bravery both of invention and hand. It seems that Mace is describing a scenario of improvisation over a ground, probably a very common practice at that time. Byrd's piece is obviously composed and not improvised, but Mace's points might still be relevant. He differentiates between sections that are more related to having good brains, probably meaning clever inventions or perhaps contrapuntal mastery, and sections that require a good hand, probably meaning such with many quick diminutions that are physically virtuosic. When analyzing Byrd's ground, we see that out of 12 variations he composed, in 6 of them he used diminutions of either eighth notes or slightly more virtuosic sextuplets. But in 9 of the variations, he used his good brain and included clever imitations of a certain motif or two upon the repeating ground. It seems then that the good brain aspect was more important to Byrd, at least in this particular piece. I'll show you what I mean. Here is the second variation of the ground. You see that the little melody presented first on the top line is found imitated in a free manner in the alto part. Free manner meaning that it's not a perfect imitation, but follows the note values and general direction of the melody. Then we see it immediately again in the tenor part, and before it reaches its last note, again in the top part. And yet another time in the top part. On top of this, there are 7 other such free entries that include only the first 4 notes of the subject. To show this more clearly when we listen to the complete piece later in the episode, I prepared a score that includes extra staves. 1 below, just with the ground melody, and 3 above, to show this extracted information from the otherwise very dense keyboard score. As you might remember from other episodes, the original keyboard notation of this piece, sometimes referred to as the Italian intavolatura, or in one source, the English-Dutch keyboard score, is not capable of showing the counterpoint precisely. It focuses mainly on showing the player what note to press and when. It should be said, however, that since we don't have an actual score that shows the precise voices, and perhaps there was never such a score, what I extract from the keyboard score is rather interpretative, and includes what I think is the significant material that Byrd chose to use and imitated between the voices. Before we jump in and listen to the entire piece from this point of view, there are several interesting notational aspects that we should address. In another episode, we discussed the different ways one can translate old notation into a modern one, what things we leave as they are, and what things we prefer to translate to something that would be easier for us to grasp. Here I chose to modernize the staves, the time signature, the note shapes, and the beaming, but tried to keep other things. For example, the use of different meters simultaneously is a beloved feature of English music, and is notated in an interesting way. When the scribe wants some of the notes to be divided into 3 instead of 2, they use black notation. As we explained in another episode, black notation allows us to notate ternary meters locally in the middle of duple meter pieces without needing to change the meter of the piece. In Byrd's case, 1 white minim is equal to a black semibreve and 1 black minim, or 3 black minims, which look just like regular semiminims, or 6 black semiminims, which look just like regular fuse. While on a theoretical level this might be a bit confusing, on a practical level, when reading the music and trying to play it, it's quite self-explanatory and clear. On top of the black notation, the scribe also adds cautionary labels of 3-1 or 6-1 to indicate that there are now 3 or 6 units respectively in 1 minim. Now, translating this into proper modern notation, you could either use triplets, which is quite messy graphically, or change the entire meter to 9/4, which forces you to add dots to many notes. This is why I personally prefer the original black notation for this music, even if it takes extra work to convince modern notation software to accept it. Another interesting notational feature is an attempt to show the continuation of voices between the hands. When one musical line starts in one hand and goes over to the other hand, the scribe notes a little Custos sign that indicates what the next note is, and that indeed there is a continuation to this line. In my score, I replaced those with a line, which is often used in modern notation for this purpose. The last issue that I like to mention is ornament signs. English Renaissance keyboard music is notorious for being swarming with ornament signs, either a single or double stroke notated on the stems or above or below notes that have no stem. Since the end of the 19th century, scholars have tried to discover their meaning, but in regard to music up to circa 1620, the extant sources seem to disallow strong conclusions. Many believe that the double stroke involves some kind of a trill or a mordant, and the single stroke some other, possibly simpler ornament involving the lower auxiliary. It seems quite clear also that during the many decades that these signs were in use, they meant different things to different people. When preparing this episode, I compared the version found in My Lady Neville's book with the one in the Fitzwilliam Virginal book, probably the most important anthology of English keyboard music from that time. Apart from having some minor differences and another title, in the Fitzwilliam Virginal book the piece is titled Tregian's Ground and not Hugh Ashton's Ground, the most significant differences are found in the ornament signs. In the Fitzwilliam Virginal book, there are slightly fewer ornaments, but the single-stroke ornament that appears only once in the version in My Lady Neville's book is used more frequently. Similar comparisons led to the conclusion that the inclusion and placement of ornaments were often more related to the individual performance practice and taste of those who copied them, rather than being an intrinsic part of the composition. And so, in the recording I made for this episode, I chose which ornaments to play according to my musical taste and the agility of my fingers. Now all that is left to do is listen to this beautiful piece. Enjoy. This was our episode about Byrd's ground. We hope you enjoyed it. Many thanks to Iason Marmaras who helped me prepare this episode. Don't forget to check the special page on our website with all the footnotes, where I also included a link to the complete performance of the piece with the beautiful original notation from my Lady Neville's book. If you enjoy early music sources, feel free to support us on Patreon. Comment, share and like. See you next time at earlymusicsources.com.